Oh, cool. There are two people here. So I was looking at uh, basically my ex's bookshelf. He used to be like a pretty retarded leftist, and now he's not as much one. But I found we found this book yesterday, which was published by Adbusters, which if you didn't know what Adbusters was, we were really lucky, to have such wonderful print media. There was so much to choose from. And Adbusters was an anarchist sort of collective magazine that came out of Canada. And I needed to share some of this book with you because it is like some of the most cringe stuff, you'll ever see on the face of this earth. So this book is Days of War, Nights of Love, Crime Think for Beginners. So the thing with the left is a lot of people think, or maybe don't understand, that these things that they believe have been really, really long running. You could cite the early anarchists of the, late 1800s up until now, really. And they're responsible for a lot of the cultural, zeitgeist, because they believe, and I think they're pretty effective at, what they would call culture jamming, right? They want to create sort of a parallel culture media market that can sell their ideas about anarchy, and I think they're actually pretty successful about this, or with this. I think this is like one of the most cringe things I've ever seen, though. So we're gonna look at it. We're gonna look at it together. um Here's the front page. I'm told this was given. This was a gift. I was like, where would someone even buy this? And then you think about how successful anarchists are as far as media and things like this. I can't think of any city that in America, a big city, that doesn't have some kind of anarchist bookstore. Philadelphia certainly had an anarchist bookstore. Listen, I'm not condoning this stuff. I think I find it very funny. And this is sort of, people have been talking about hipsters. People have been on Twitter, I guess, lately. They're nostalgic about the early 2000s, like, but I was there. I was there. And I actually, as much as I say my friends didn't talk about politics, I mean, we really did. I wasn't friends with a lot of political people because I found them very annoying. There were people that talked about politics. So this thing was printed in, if you've just gotten here, we're looking at this book today. This thing was printed in 2001, I believe. Let me see here. It was printed 2001. And they're so corny, like everything about it. It's like plagiarized 2001, you know? So this is Crime Think for Beginners, guys. A leftist sort of really corny manual. Uh, so it starts with this. This is like one of the first pages in the book. And it says, think about your direct bodily experience of life. No one can lie to you about that. How many hours a day do you spend in front of a television screen, a computer screen, behind an automobile windscreen, all three screens combined? Like, I don't know, some of it could like end up in, trapped in the screen, which was a movie idea of found footage that I had. It says your ticket out of this world. This is the second page. So, and then here we have the table of discontent. How corny is this? It's so crazy. Warning. the word revolution, which is used constantly throughout these pages with an ironic naivety, may be amusing or off putting to the modern reader, convinced as he is that effective resistance to the status quo is impossible and therefore not worth considering. Gentle reader, we ask that you suspend your disbelief long enough to at least contemplate whether or not such a thing might be worthwhile if it were possible, and then that you suspend it further, long enough to recognize this disbelief for what it is, despair. It's like such angsty teenage weirdness. So I'm going to read the table of discontents to you guys. Um, preface, preface, preface. What is a crime think? And like, you got to notice how it's how it's spelled. We're being cheeky with the spelling. Look at us, we're such edgy anarchists. Forward by Nietzsche Guevara. LA Short History of Crime Think, Workers Collective. All important documents, Crime Think Contradictionary. Here's the contradictionary. I can't get over this. I think it's just, and it's like nothing ever changes for these people. And that's a big deal for like millennials, because this was like, I guess, kind of cool. It was like cool to like go dumpster diving and like do all this weird, stupid, asocial stuff, antisocial stuff, like, oh, I'm so punks. I'm going to go be a crust punk and hop on a train and maybe do some heroin, That's anarchy. There was a song I used to listen to that was really funny called Anarchy Means That I Litter. That's by Adam and His Package, which, yeah, I think a lot of the hipster conversation on Twitter is very funny because people weren't there. And a lot of people listen to a lot of different things. If you were alive in 2001 and you were not a little baby, please chime in with some of the music you listen to. Anyway, so today we are examining this Manual of Anarchy. So let's read the table of discontents, okay? This is the Crime Think Contradictionary. Ooh, we're so edgy. A is for anarchy. B is for the bourgeois. C is for capitalism and for culture. D is for death and domestication. F is for freedom. G is for gender. And we're going to look at that one together. Because I when I saw that this was published in 2001, I'm like, is there any trans stuff in here? H is for history, for hygiene, and for hypocrisy. I is for identity, ideology, and for image. L is for love. And when you look at the L is for love section, it's like it's really pretty satanic. M is, love is all, love is the law, right? M is for their media, for movement, and for myth, for their media, right? Because this is the whole point of Adbusters. That's who published this. Was to culture jam, and I think they're actually pretty good at it. It's an interesting cultural artifact for sure. P is for plagiarism, for politics, and for production. S is for sex and for space. T is for technology and for theft. And finally, W is for work. Oh no. Type in a letter if you've listened to this list of like ones that you might want to look at with me. Then the third section is called Conclusion, Anywhere Out of This World. Afterworld by Gloria Cubana, bibliography index about the authors. So what does crime think? Today, everything that can't be bought, sold, or faked is crime think. What's going on, Roberta Glass? I got a cultural artifact here from 2001, printed by Adbusters. Guess who this book belonged to? I would never own such a thing. This was too corny for me even then. I was like, what do you mean you want to go dumpster diving? And I worked at Whole Foods in the early 2000s. Like, I was there, guys. I was there. But I thought these people were always like really, really annoying. And what's up, Soup Broth? Anyway, so I think we should skip to G is for gender. What do you guys think? Let's see if there's any mention of transgenderism in G is for gender. So this was printed by Adbusters in 2001. Adbusters was an anarchist publishing sort of collective out of Canada. And I actually used to read it all the time. I used to read it a lot because it was a really cool magazine. It was like a lot of fun. And I think when we think about the left and sort of like millennial culture, like a lot of millennials, I don't even think they realized that they were sort of like frogs in some like boiling water, right? They didn't realize that they were, you know, being brought up in a context of like anarchy and communist thought. Yeah, fun stuff, right? So G is for gender. So it's not very long, okay? We've got the feminist gaze, or the male gaze, sorry, over here, the more sort of Marxist take. And then over here we have gender. So it says men look at women, women watch themselves being looked at. Simone de Beauvoir, I can never say that lady's name. Can't speak French. And so the gaze is not about desire, it is about power. Men yell things at women on the street, not because they are attracted to them and think this will get them into bed with them. Even if it did, that would be immaterial, but to remind themselves that someone else is even lower on the pyramid than they are. When you look at women sizing them up, remember those eyes you are looking with are not your eyes. They are the same eyes that are watching you from above. You are nothing in their eyes. Cut out their eyes. That's what this says. What do you guys think of that? I just thought this would be like a fun, weird thing to look at for us. Okay. And to point out that the left never really changes and they never really grow up out of their weird, angsty sort of teen phase. And they're a lot like, you know, communists, in that they believe in this sort of utopia that does not exist. And they misjudge, I think, human nature often. So, all right. So then we're going to read this section, which is G is for gender. You can see in the very movements of their bodies, forced painfully into the narrow space of permitted masculinity, moving inside an invisible cage, how the supposed winners of the gender game suffer just as much as the others from their hollow victory. Constantly terrified of each other and everyone else, themselves most of all, they take their fear out of the rest of us, perpetuating the climate of fear and violence. But when the terrain of affection itself has been occupied, with every gesture has been appropriated by the language of coercion, how will we approach each other for support, for sanctuary, and for healing? So this book actually is interesting because it doesn't believe in gender. And it's a cultural artifact from 2001, the left, a snapshot of the left from 2001. And they're not, you know, mentioning anything about being trans. In fact, it kind of sounds more like being non-binary, like they want to break gender, right? Because I believe whoever contributed to this section was probably a Marxist feminist. Which if you weren't going to believe that the sex role stereotypes that trans people embody are breaking the norms of any kind of gender, right? What transgenderism actually does is reify sexual stereotypes, which is not what this book is promoting. So I find that actually kind of interesting. It says gender is another false division of life into arbitrary categories, none of which can adequately describe or contain any of us, in order to define us against each other in the interests of power with a capital P. There is no male, there is no female. Get free, go off the map. So sort of like a queer theory, sort of like gender fluid thing. But what they're actually saying here, I think, is that gender is a construct, which it definitely is, and that one is, not really, people don't actually conform easily into either of these categories. And what transgenderism does, one more time, is reify sexual stereotypes, because it's a fetish for men and it's an escape hatch for women, if that makes sense. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the anarchist book did not mention anything about transgenderism. I guess if there was a reprint of this today, it might have more, queer kind of bullshit in it. All right, what else can I show you from this book? Let's do L is for Love. L is for Love, page 150. I just thought this was so funny. Yeah, it has stuff like in it like this. For people who just got here, we're examining a cultural artifact from 2001, printed by Adbusters, Days of War, Nights of Love, Crime Think for beginners. Printed by Adbusters in 2001. Okay, so L is for Love. I already forgot which page that was on. That's a bunch of this stuff. Oh my goodness. This book is wild. I can't believe he had this book. I want you guys to know I would never buy such a book. Although some of it I kind of like, look at how edgy this is. Transgenderism includes fetishism and a mirage of associations. What is feminine and female? Those who self-identify with the phenomenon are perverts or dysphoric. I think they're mentally ill and they're in a cult, and I find the whole thing to be actually really sad. All right, here we are. So whoever gave this book to him really liked this chapter. L is for Love. Join the resistance. Fall in love. Falling in love is the ultimate act of revolution, of resistance to today's tedious, socially restrictive, culturally constrictive, patently ridiculous world. Love transforms the world. Where the lover formerly felt boredom, he now feels passion. Where she once was complacent, she now is excited and compelled to self-asserting action. The world in which one seemed empty and tiresome becomes filled with meaning. I think they want you to fall in love with revolution, filled with risks and rewards, with majesty and danger. Life for the lover is a gift and adventure with the highest possible stakes. Every moment is memorable, heartbreaking in its fleeting beauty. When he falls in love, a man who once felt disoriented, alienated, and confused finally knows what he wants. L is for Love in the Anarchist handbook here. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is this? And whoever gave this to my ex really liked this chapter. Really, really liked it. So I just remember, and I say this all the time to my audience, I went back to school a little bit later. I had a different life trajectory than a lot of these people. Oh my God. Right? W's for work. Oh no, we have to work. Oh no. Yeah, I had a different life trajectory. And I was like, I've always had to like bust my butt. Actually, I've always had to work. And I remember being at Temple University and Occupy Wall Street was happening. And I was like, I can't afford to go there. I have to finish school so I don't have to sell pornography anymore. But thank God I did do that because, meaning the selling of the porn, because I really hated it and I needed to understand that I wanted to do better things in life. Um, so work is the very opposite of creation, which is play. The world only began to get something of value from me the moment I stopped being a serious member of society and became myself. So, this is Henry Miller. This is a quote from Henry Miller, The Revolution of Everyday Life. The state, the nation, the United Nations of the world were nothing but one great aggregation of individuals who repeated the mistakes of their forefathers. They were caught in the wheel from birth and they kept at it until death. And this treadmill they tried to dignify by calling it life. Get off the wheel of life, guys. Realize your true self. If you asked anyone to explain or define what was the best be all end all, you got a blank look for an answer. Life was something which philosophers dealt with in books that no one read. Those in the thick of life, the plugs in the harness, had no time for such idle questions. You've got to eat, haven't you? This query was supposed to be a stopgap and which had already been answered, if not in the absolute negative, at least in a disturbingly relative negative by those who knew, was a clue to all questions which followed in a veritable Eleusinian state. From the little reading I had done, I had observed that the men who were most in life were molding life, who were life itself, ate little, slept little, owned nothing. They had no illusions about duty or their kith and kin or the preservation of the state. They were interested in truth and in truth alone. They were interested Oh, sorry. They recognized only one kind of activity, creation. And that's why artists are left, right? It takes a very like imaginative sort of, almost crazy kind of person to believe in a lot of these things. Um I'm not here to judge. This is like a nostalgia trip. This is so funny to me. Nobody could command their services because they had of their own pledged themselves to give all. They have gave gratuitously because that is the only way to give. Was the life. This was the way of life which appealed to me. Right, Henry Miller. This is a Henry Miller quote. It made sound sense. It was life, not the simulacrum which those about me worshipped. And I always say, like, anarchy is like basically like brothers of libertarianism. They're the same kind of idea, like living your true self, being an individual. That's why it differs from communism. Um, you know, it's about individualism. It's about learning who you are in regard to the machine, right? That they might call it something like that. Um, and it's, a lot of artists. It appeals to a lot of artists because it's imaginary. A lot of it. Um, and so I don't know. They have like different interviews with people. If you just got here, we're looking at this anarchist handbook from 2001, printed by Adbusters. Uh, oh no, work. Oh no. This is also a great illustration to show you that the left never really changes. They're always living in some kind of fantasy land of their own creation. And it's, I guess, like if you have a bunch of money, if you're like a champagne socialist, then it's kind of a fun thing to do, right? It gives you meaning, which is what they say in the L is for Love chapter. Um, present crime think projects. So we even have the Black Bloc in here, right? Antifa. It says Anarchy. Once you've tried it, nothing else compares. You know, I think it's also a very self-centered thing. I think there has to be a balance between the individual and the collective, which is why I guess I'm like a classical liberal or something. I don't know, but for a long time I thought anarchy was kind of cool. But I was never into like dumpster diving or any of that stuff because that's gross. My sister was a crust punk. And then, you know, she died and did a bunch of heroin in between that. So is that a great way to live? I don't think so. Here's one. You have to realize that someday you will die. Until you know that, you are useless. It is only after you have lost everything that you are free to do anything, with like a picture of a grenade. So edgy, you know? Yeah. Before the insanity, but it's always been bubbling up. I think that's my purpose in showing you this book today, is that the left, especially the far more fanatic radical sections of the left, have always yearned for violence. They're super into it. They love it. They think it's an act of love, right? It's an act of revolution to dedicate yourself to this sort of nihilistic cause. Um, and it's been a really, you know, they've been really good at culture jamming. That was like the whole thing with Adbusters, which I did read in the early 2000s. You know, we were lucky. We got to read Vice when it was free. It was mostly softcore pornography, though. I got to read Adbusters. There was definitely a cultural milieu of the early 2000s that was like a frog in hot water, not really realizing that all the media we were consuming was being made by communists and anarchists. You just thought it was like edgy and funny, you know? Uh, Here's some more of their graphic art. What's the price on your head? Dishwasher, six. This is like a real Fight Club image here, you know? And I may or may not agree with some of this. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting cultural artifact. A new reality is better than a new movie, a fantasy of defeat, an escape into chains, a vacation at a dead end. Life can be beautiful when we start to break free. What, I remember these. Does anyone else remember Adbusters? Is anyone else in my audience like my age or older? Do you remember the early 2000s? Yeah, we have to find the Ted Kaczynski chapter because it's such a parallel into the Luigi Mangione thing. You know, it's the same kind of idea, this like kind of folk hero, this violent guy that does violent actions so that people will finally hear what he has to say. Yeah, where was the Unabomber thing? I need to find it because I found this last night and I was like reading through it. Oh, of course you have classic Why I Love Shoplifting. Um where's the stupid here it is. Yeah. The left loves violence. And that's why I think Luigi Mangione and the Unabomber are like a parallel to each other, because I think the reason Luigi Mangione did any of the things he did was so that people would listen to him and that he would get his day in the sun. That's what I think about Luigi Mangione. Hijacking of the Washington Post. This is spring 1995. In response to the constant stream of misinformation from the mainstream media about the case of the so-called Unabomber, a crime think commando team led by a low-ranking graphic designer in the advertising department of the Washington Post removed an advertisement for pantyhose from the first section of the Sunday edition and replaced it with this hot-headed tirade. The Unabomber, a hero for our time. If you just got here, we're reading this anarchist thing that Adbusters made. So the Unabomber, a hero for our time. I've killed more people than the Unabomber because I've paid more taxes than he has. Oprah Winfrey. Pop quiz. What is it called when one of the finest minds of a generation picks a few individuals who are personally involved in the destruction of the environment or the attention span and reasoning ability of tens and thousands of Americans and kills or maims them in pursuit of finding a voice for his concerns about social issues? What I love about the left is they're very transparent, you know? They're not really hiding it, ever. Concerns that otherwise would be heard by very few. Clearly, it is murder. And what is it called when a nation of overweight barbers and underpaid clerks, of lazy, unemployed middle-class intellectuals and talk show educated housewives, of cowardly fast food chain managers and racist sorority girls, conspiracies to execute this murder in the name of protecting the glorious status quo from his obviously deranged mad bombings, right? Here's the excuse, right? Their justification for violence. When really Ted Kaczynski was a pathetic person who needed God in his life. And ultimately, the Unabomber story fascinates me because the reason he got caught, his brother's sister recognized his writing style. His brother was a devout Buddhist and did the right thing. Turned Ted in. I will stand by that. That I will never waver on that thought. I think the Unabomber needed God. Anyway, so, and what is it called when a nation of overweight barbers and underpaid clerks of lazy, we already read that, sorry. The death penalty, and rightly applied to in defense of the right of forest clear cutters and professional liars to continue bending our world to their vision without the danger of being molested by those who prefer redwood forests to quick marts and folk songs to detergent slogans. Seriously, and rhetoric aside, what is the difference between the two situations? In one case, a single person evaluates his situation and decides upon a course of action he feels right. In the other case, millions of people who are not used to making up their minds for themselves feel strong enough altogether to strike out blindly against an individual who does not remain within their boundaries of acceptable behavior. Now, our gentle and moderate reader would no doubt like to object that it is not fear of the freestanding individual that prompts the outcry against this terrorist, but moral indignation. For he has taken innocent, and they have innocent in quotation marks here, innocent life in his quest to have his ideas heard, and that is wrong in every situation. But this nation of petty imbeciles, right? Everybody's stupid except for us leftists. But in this nation of petty imbeciles, is not regularly outraged about the taking of innocent life. As long as it fits within the parameters of the status quo, they don't care at all. And that's a mirror. That's a reflection, right? They're always projecting. How many more people than the Unabomber have tobacco companies maimed and killed by using advertising to addict them, and at very young, uninformed age, to extremely harmful drug? How about the companies and who regulated tobacco? The government. All right. Not, the lobby groups, the tobacco lobby groups. I agree with some of the stuff. It's just, I think it's an extreme answer. They don't want the boring answers. They want the extreme violent answers, which is the radical left and the radical right, in my opinion. And they're the same. They're the same. And I think we'll look at Graham Plattner in a little bit here. But anyway, if you were around in the early 2000s and you listened to music, what were you listening to? That's my question today for our nostalgia stream. Okay. So blah, 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 tobacco's killed people. How about the companies that advertise and sell cheap liquor in impoverished neighborhoods filled with alcoholics? It's right. They never advocate for any kind of self-responsibility, accountability. It's always the fault of the government or the corporations. It's never your fault. How many citizens of third world nations have suffered and died at the hands of governments supported by such corporations as Shell Oil or even by the US government itself? And how much animal life is destroyed thoughtlessly every year, every day in death camp factory farms or in ecological destruction brought about by such companies as Exxon or McDonald's? No one is particularly concerned about these abuses of innocent life. And so what's interesting to me as this and its cultural artifactness is that the left actually used to have real causes. They really got subsumed by like this trans stuff. They really did a number on themselves. Like they had serious causes. Anyway, I just don't think their solutions are good, right? Violence to me is never the answer. No one is particular. Okay, right? So no one cares about this, which is why the Unabombers' actions are justified. And indeed, it is harder to be, for they are institutionalized within the social and economic system, normal, in quotation marks. Besides, it is hard to figure out who exactly is responsible for them, for they are the results of the workings of complicated bureaucracies inside an even more complicated social economic system. On the other hand, when one individual attempts to make his criticism of this destructive system heard by one of the only really effective means, it is easy to pick him out and string him up. I mean, the Unabomber killed people. He like named people. He created terror and fear just so that he could have his day in the sun. That's disgusting. And our hypocritical outrage about his wrongdoings compared those of our own social institutions shows that it is his ability to act upon his own conclusions that truly shocks and frightens us most of all. Our fear of the Unabomber as a freely acting individual shows in the attempts of our media has made to demonize him. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult. Aspects of his character, such as his academic prowess and his ability to live a Thoreauian, self-sufficient existence, which would normally occasion praise, are now used to demonstrate that he is maladjusted freak. Do you know this book, Terry? Do you know this one? Could I mail you this book? No, I definitely can't. It's not mine. I would never own such a thing. I was never a hardcore leftist. In the early 2000s, I was a hipster and I was riding my bike to sell shitty pornography to gay people. And I was dancing at house music events in warehouses. And I was listening to the Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs and Crystal Castles and Tapes and Tapes and LCD Sound System. I was far more interested in having fun and dancing than being political at all. But I did know people like this, and they were very annoying, I thought. You know this book well. That's so funny. Isn't it? It's kind of fun. It's like a fun. And so, Terry, you just got here, but I was mentioning the G is for gender chapter. and how it does sound more like a radical feminist take, like they want to obliterate gender, like they don't want to reify sexual stereotypes like transgenderism wants to do. And I find that interesting that that was the position of the left in 2001 and the late 90s, because it's before, it was far more Marxist. You know, queer theory is a postmodern thing. I still like the do you have ideas or do ideas have you piece a lot. Ooh, yeah. No, I'm not, I don't disagree with like everything in this book. I think their solutions are not solutions that I agree with, but some of their critiques are interesting, and this is, I think, fascinating, honestly. All right, we're almost done with the Unabomber. We were just reading about the justification of the Unabomber, which you can draw a parallel to the Luigi Mangione kind of folk hero situation that we're going through right now. You know, because the more things change, the more they stay the same. Okay. Where was I with this Unabomber chapter? Newspapers print the most arbitrary and disconnected excerpts of his manifesto that they can combine, then describe the manifesto as being random and disconnected. They even describe it as ramblings with a straight face, despite the well-known short attention span of today's media. But it is not necessary that we accept the media's typical oversimplification of the case. The Unabomber's manifesto has, as a result of his efforts, been published and widely distributed, right? Because he needed to commit violence, but his violence is no worse than the violence that the corporations commit, right? That's why he's justified in his actions. We can all read it for ourselves, not just in disconnected excerpts, but in its entirety, and decide for ourselves what we think of his ideas. Do not be frightened by the Unabomber's willingness to stand out from the crowds and take whatever actions he believes are necessary to achieve his goals. In a civilization so stricken with mindless submission to social norms and irrational rules, his example should be refreshing rather than horrifying. Right? The violence is refreshing, guys. For his worst crimes are no worse than ours. Really, I've never bombed anybody. In being citizens of this nation, right? You're complicit because you live in America. And his greatest deeds as a dedicated and intelligent individual far outshine those of most of our heroes, who are, for the most part, basketball players and cookie cutter pop musicians anyway. At least, given the chance as we are, we should read his manifesto and come to our own conclusions rather than allowing the press and popular opinion and paranoia decide for us. All right, what else is going on in your chats? Yeah, but now suddenly it's way out there. If you're not 100% behind the grown men acting their little girl fetishes out in public. Yeah, I know. The left used to have, it's kind of sad, really, what happened to them. They used to have real causes and real arguments. Now nothing they say even makes sense, because they've been subsumed by a cult that denies reality. And I think, you know, if you are on the far left or the far right, you tend to deny reality and human nature. That's what I think. With anarchist material, you get a lot of heaven laden, wordy, and flirty stuff that rests upon intellectual concepts that few of anyone would think about by their mediums alone. That's their folly. Interesting. Yeah, let's look at some more of the pictures. Yeah, no worries. Hope you guys are enjoying this. I just couldn't believe it. Of course he would have something like this. Stupid dumpster diving idiot. But I do like some of the the zine. It's like very nostalgic to look at this like kind of zine-y artwork. Terry, what were the bands you were listening to in the early 2000s? Are there ways of thinking, acting, and living that might be more satisfying and exciting than the ways we think, act, and live today? Like, I don't even disagree with this. I like the art one. I like these sort of like art things, I think, more than the written material. My conclusion is he's another extremist that tried to force his ideas through violence, a terrorist. Yes, the same as Luigi Mangione. Dumpster diving school. I don't know. I think I was lucky because I worked at Whole Foods, so we got to like go through the stuff that they were going to get rid of before it went to the dumpster. I ate a lot of free produce in those 2 years that I worked there. um, yeah. So yeah, we're just looking through this. Yeah, so it's so classic, right? No gods, no masters. This is a long ongoing tradition for them. Um, God is dead, and with him, moral law. What's really funny to me about anyone ever saying God is dead is this idea that man could kill God. It's just not possible. Everything that glorifies God in the afterworld slanders humanity in the real world. You know, I find it to be very satanic, you know, especially the love chapter. Um, was the guy engaged in performative or groveling and redundant dumpster diving, or was he actually getting useful stuff out of it? I don't know. I didn't know him at this time. I would have never given him the time of day, actually. I did not like these people. They were stuffy. You know, what's so funny about from all the left, right? From the hippies to the anarchists to the vegans, they truly believe, they're true believers. So they're puritanical. They're very stuffy. If you don't believe the same things, you're not in the clique. And I didn't have any time for that. I just wanted to like get stoned and dance to house music. The same stuff I listen to now: Suede, Pulp, Blur, uh, Usher, Britney Spears. Nice. Yeah, exactly. They're stuck up, and it was a real turn off for me. That's me. Any kind of group. I'm like, I don't want to like. That's why I guess I did identify with Anarchy for a long time, like in a philosophical sense. It says the wages of sin are freedom, right? That's very satanic, isn't it? Um, no masters. If you liked school, you'll love work. You know, I've said this before on this channel, but as an educator, someone who's spent a lot of time teaching, I think school is important. I think literacy is power. I still believe that. You know, this stuff wouldn't get anywhere if people were illiterate. And this is a vestige of like, you know, print media literacy. We were far more literate even like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Remember the boy that introduced me to crime think, telling me it was unattractive that I believed in God. Yikes. Oh, wow. Hierarchy, you know, kill. It's all this utopia. I can't show you that. This is not appropriate. We're just going through the pictures now. An army of slaves has escaped from Egypt. Next, the moral basis of Western civilization. I don't know what to think about that one. This is in the No Masters chapter. That's people don't like this. People don't like it, but there are people in this world that lead and those that follow. Um, it's the natural way of things. It's just how things are. I'm sorry, anarchists. um Maybe the law does fail to deliver justice sometimes, but that's all that stands between us and anarchy, right? I guess they're making fun of this guy, but I kind of agree. The brethren of the free spirit. B is for the bourgeois. Raise the double standard of living. Good judgment is nothing more than compliance. What, that hierarchy is like something that's unavoidable. Conform even when you don't see any people around you. The one you don't see might hit you. When you are detached, decisions are slower and harder to make. What else? What other images can I... This one's very feminist, right? A lady doing breastfeeding and it says inappropriate behavior. Money people. Who are the natural elite? I don't even think there is one. And as a classical liberal, I believe in meritocracy. And you live in America. You can make something of yourself. Bourgeois family arguing about who broke the garbage disposal. And it has Ritalin, internet access, child abuse, cable TV, stock options, drug addiction, date rape, battered wife, anorexia, Boy Scouts, right? America's horrible. The suburbs are terrible. Look at all these horrible things that happen. Okay, so you would agree, I think, with this anarchist book. I think you'd agree. And that's okay. We're here to have a diversity of opinion. That's fine. We live in America, right? That's why this thing could be published. Oh man, there was a big trans controversy at Crime Think in the late 2000s. Oh my God, what do you mean? Tell me. We don't have a sort of merit. It's not a merit system where... Yeah, I know, but that's like unavoidable also. I don't know. I can't do the doom and gloom stuff anymore, guys, and I find the left to have a problem with their obsession with doom and gloom. I'm not here for that. I can't do it anymore. I'm too old. C is for capitalism and culture, right? They want a culture jam. They want to create a parallel culture, and they were very successful, I think, at doing so. We're seeing the fruits of their labor right now, 20 years later. Right? Capitalism, what's so bad about it? They had a piece of propaganda with a woman's face wrapped in bandages and a scalpel coming at that. It said plastic surgery is self-imposed violence. Oh shit. So the other factions probably got upset about that. Oh my goodness. That's crazy. The trans community freaked out and said this was unfair because they have to get surgery to conform to the standards of a patriarchal society. What was that? The Chuck Palahniuk book about this transgender person. Invisible Monsters. Did anybody ever read Invisible Monsters? And that's why women get plastic surgery, as if that's why. They pulled it immediately and apologized, and they've never done that for anything else. Yep, they took over, huh? Because in this 2001 edition, it says gender should be obliterated. And as we know, Terry, transgenderism is nothing but a reiteration a reification of sex role stereotypes. Right? They have to hold them up and perform them. I think it's very anti-anarchy, actually. You have to find your true self through the man and through capitalism. Like, what? What do you mean, trans people? They really like are like not true leftists, like at all. That's fascinating. I appreciate that story. Can you spend time like money? They're buying your happiness from you, steal it back. I mean, like a really nice, like, sort of communist looking art here. Yeah, the left used to actually have like principles in a way. I don't know. I know, right? Just think if they had never bowed down to these disgusting men. Just think where they could have been. I don't think Trump would have ever happened. Right? We've got oh no, you work at a desk. How terrible for you. How terrible this modern day wage slavery that you work at a desk and you don't work in a dangerous textile mill where you could lose a hand or an arm. How bad. Oh, how terrible. Yeah, this is some fascinating stuff. Adbusters, early 2000s leftism. I don't know if we'll look at all the pictures. D is for death and domestication. Right? Because it's so bad. The nuclear family is terrible. Such a bad, bad thing to have stability and people that love you and food freely available and indoor plumbing and whatever else, our society, our civilization has to offer. Sorry. The dead hand of the past. Yeah. The American left was too busy going amoral to immoral and doing drugs and being sexually libertine. So what sprung up in the 2010s wasn't surprising. Yes, and this book has a lot of very spicy imagery in it for sure. Society of Crime Think never bowed the knee to the trans call. Such a bad thing for people to live among their kin and orient themselves towards their survival. I know, right? So terrible. So terrible. Myth is history without time. Whoever had that, this book underlined it. They felt that was important. This is Starred. It's about punk music. So it's so silly. I think there's value in creating community outside the nuclear family. Totally. Definitely not at the expense of it. Yeah, what are you, some kind of right-wing kook, Terry? Some of the related zines going around now have Hermaphroditic animals. Ew. All right. It's gross. Everything's so gross now. This was definitely a precursor to it. I'm trying to see if there are any I think they're talking about how you shouldn't shower or something here. I'm not really sure what they're saying in this. Yeah, but you're not. I think we're actually like moderate comparatively. So I'm not interested in like racism or anything like that. I want like common sense policy that protects hardworking people from antisocial criminal losers. That's what I want. I believe in law and order. I don't believe in anarchy anymore. 8 reasons why capitalists want you to buy deodorant or want to sell you deodorant. Shall we? Shall we find out? Anarchists have had this thing going with shock mimetics by showing pornography and sometimes gore and whatever else spliced with their monologues. Yes, that's what this book is. You're pretty chill and just want people to act right. I agree. All right, 8 reasons why capitalists want to sell you deodorant. 1, body smells are erotic and sexual, right? Speaking of how perverted they are, right? Capitalists don't like that because they are impotent and opposed to all manifestations of sensuality and sexuality. Sexually awakened people are potentially dangerous to capitalists and their rigid asexual system. This is wild. What does it even mean? Body smells remind us that we are, this is number 2. Body smells remind us we are animals. Capitalists don't want us to be reminded of that. Animals are dirty. They eat things off the ground, not out of plastic wrappers. They are openly sexual. They don't wear suits or ties, and they don't get their hair done. They don't show up to work on time. But I'm not an animal. I'm a human being. Number 3, body smells are unique. Everyone has their own body smell. Capitalists don't like individuality. That's not true, actually, because different individuality and things like this create new markets. Like, it's just not true. There are millions of body smells, but only a few deodorant smells. Capitalists like that. Number 4, some deodorants are harmful. Capitalists like that because they are always looking for new illnesses to cure. Capitalists love to invent new medicines. Medicines make money for them and win them prizes. They also cause new illnesses so capitalists can invent even more new medicines. That's what transgenderism is, actually, guys. Deodorants cost you money. Capitalists are especially pleased about that. Deodorants hide the damage that capitalist products, this is number 6. Deodorants hide the damage that capitalist products cause your body. Eating meat and other chemical-filled foods sold by capitalists makes you smell bad. They sound like some of these Maha people, right? These JFK Jr., RFK Jr., whatever his name is. Bleh, that guy. Kennedys are a cursed family. Wearing pantyhose makes you smell bad. Capitalists don't want you to stop wearing pantyhose or eating meat. Deodorant users are insecure. Capitalists like insecure people. Insecure people don't start trouble. Insecure people also buy room fresheners, hair conditioners, makeup, and magazines with articles about dieting. Number 8, deodorants are unnecessary. Capitalists are very proud of that, and they win marketing awards for it. Smell bad. Be an anarchist. I do think there's a lot of anti-white mess I'm done with, but I can't get with the hate people have. Yeah, it's I don't want the extremes on either side. That's how I feel about it. They want us to be, yeah, they want us to be animals. Uh I'd like to have a pure economy without abstract nonsense so that I could be as free as possible. What does that mean to you, a pure economy? I like this one back in the day. The deodorant one totally was all crunchy. It's so funny how I don't think people understand the current political landscape, because I think a lot of people like this who were truly leftists got kind of turned off by the left when they adopted the trans stuff first off, right? Um, and then 2020 and how no one was fighting against what was happening with this medical tyranny. And so a lot of people who are like very crunchy, who like might have been into crystals, like a Spencer Pratt, or even a Terry Strange, who may have been on the left before or like kind of vibed with those ideas before, were pushed out by these kind of more radical psychopaths. Yeah, definitely. Totally. All right. I think we're done. I think we're done with this. But, I'm going to turn my camera off here for a second. And I want to show you the Adbusters, because so this book was published by Adbusters. So let me share the screen about, if you didn't know who Adbusters was. Okay, so they're responsible basically for at least the publishing of this, as far as I know. So this is a media foundation. It's a Canadian-based, of course, Canada, not-for-profit, pro-environment organization, founded in 1989 in British Columbia. So who's this person? I don't even know. So this guy, Estonian Canadian, interesting. His family fled. They spent some time in a German refugee camp. Okay, so yeah, this is a book that was published by them. I don't know if I'm going to do the Graham Plattner stuff today. I thought, I might, but I think I might save it for a different day. I just thought that was kind of fun. Nostalgia, Anarchy, Adbusters. 2020 was definitely got me. Yeah, because they were so hypocritical, and they abandoned any kind of, at least this book. At least this book that we were just looking at had like some principles behind it. They left all of the principles behind when that happened. Definitely. Yeah, we were really spoiled, I think. We were the last people to experience like a truly wonderful like print media, and Adbusters or Vice back when it was free. I find it interesting that a lot of these magazines started in Canada. I wonder what that's all about. The contemporary American left is fixated on intersectionality and niche identity stuff, right? It's very postmodern, and the rhetoric therein. And they're fixated on why they shouldn't ever unhitch their wagon from the Democratic Party. Well, I think there's some stuff going on with the Democrats regarding this Senate race in Maine and Graham Plattner, and I think, we'll talk about it at some other point. Bourgeois. Yeah. I had Rolling Stone delivered to my parents' house when I was a teenager for years. I loved it. I loved print media. I loved magazines. I loved fashion magazines. I loved it all. It's really sad, It's like all gone. So I do want to show you guys this clip of Fetterman, though, I think. So now we're in the bookmarks section of my thing. All right, so this is John Fetterman, who I didn't like at first, but the more he speaks his mind about the Democrats and what he believes, he truly strikes me as a very Pennsylvania type of guy. This archetype is very familiar to me, But here's what he has to say about Graham Plattner, and we'll do a different show about him.
On Graham Plattner.
No, P. Hustle. That's what Hustle. That's what you call him? Okay, yeah.
That's what you're calling him?
Oh, no, that's how he described himself, P. Hustle. That's his name. I mean, the MSN folks, do you love P. Hustle? And that MSN now? Because he's awesome, right? Was it the Nazi tattoo? Is it the insults and the kick account?
How do you think Democrats should handle this? He's likely to become the Democratic nominee for the Senate next week.
Some Democrats will defend that mess. I will not. So it's really up to Maine voters. So the people on MS Now, they want to defend a guy with a Nazi tattoo?
Who covered it up with a Norse wolf, which is still a Nazi tattoo?
Okay, if he want to defend a guy that describes the American Army as absolute trash, okay. If P. Hustle said that a Purple Heart awardee is a dumb that doesn't deserve to live, okay. A guy that was probably dropping picks for a decade on Kick. Why is P. Hustle on Kick? I mean, Kick has serious issues, lack of kinds of controls, a lot of underage people. It's really been controversial. Why was he on it for a decade?
Why do you think?
I mean, that's a question. I mean, who's investigating why? I mean, was he sure that he was only talking to, women that are old enough? I mean, what was his protocol? How could he be sure?
Are you concerned that there's more to drop?
Well, he lied to everybody. He said that there wasn't any after his Nazi tattoo situation. And now there's more and more of the things. So he's already lied about that. So I assume, it's like they say, for every ranch you see in Texas, there's 50 that you haven't seen. So I'm sure there's a lot of more ranches in P. Hustle's life.
Oh, I really didn't like him at first, but the more I see him talk about things kind of off the cuff, and I think this is what both political parties kind of need to learn more about authenticity. People crave authenticity. They're tired of these career politicians, which Plattner is definitely one. And I don't have to agree with all of his policies, but I think, look at his funny head. He's like Uncle Fester. But he's authentic. That's what people really, I think, yearn for now. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope it was fun for you guys to look at this Days of War, Nights of Love, anarchist sort of, handbook here. I don't know. I got stuff to do. I have to sort through all of my clothes today. That's my goal today, is to sort through all of my clothes, get rid of the ones I don't ever wear anymore, and keep the ones I want to keep, and pack my 2 suitcases. And I've decided to get a multi-pass ticket on Amtrak. I think that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use June or the rest of June to do some traveling on the Amtrak. So Terry, I'll hit you up when I'm on the West Coast, which is my plan at this point. Because you do only live once. And though I might not agree with the solutions that the anarchists put forth, I do think that it is important to own your own mind, be an individual, make your own decisions, and not let outside external forces control you. I agree with that. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to do that. I think I might buy one of these like old Olympus film cameras. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but I might do that and do like a little art project. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't think I'll buy like the super expensive one. I'll just get like maybe the 76 Like these go for a lot, but the 76 zoom one is not as expensive. These are like the hipster camera from like 10 years ago. So yeah, so maybe this is my plug for Amtrak. Like Amtrak has this deal where you could buy a $500 multi-pass ticket. It includes 10 stops over a 30-day time period. And you can basically take it wherever you want for those 30 days if it's just like 10 different places and there aren't multiple legs in between trips. And what's kind of cool about the Amtrak versus flying is that you can take 2 full suitcases and a carry-on and they won't charge you extra. So that's what I'm thinking of doing. Yeah, so I want to also probably stop in Savannah. Yeah, I'm not going to get this one. It would be more like, what is it, the 76? Yeah, the 760. This guy, he's a little less popular, but he does basically the same thing. The focal length is, the same. There's a zoom on it. It just doesn't have that fun slidey part. But these are usually less expensive than the other one with the slidey part. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of doing. It's the final countdown here. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, I want to do some film. I think once everything gets settled, I'd like to get into processing color film because it's kind of expensive to take places and you can't trust. They got rid of those old machines that, you used to be able to drop your film off at the grocery store and they'd have a machine there that would do it for them. But they got rid of a lot of those machines because, first of all, digital came in, and also the chemicals were hard to get rid of and kind of expensive. But I do miss the days of print media. Yeah, I've thought about also like maybe buying this guy. This is a seller, I think, out of like Ukraine or something crazy. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up for me. I have a plan, a loose plan. I am gonna do a little trip, and hopefully also I'll be writing on the road. That's why I like a train. It takes a long time. It gives you this kind of space to like think. So I'm thinking West Palm Beach to Savannah, Savannah to Philly, Philly to Chicago, Chicago to Portland, and then back. I don't know. It sounds kind of fun. So I'll catch you guys on the flip side. And I hope everyone's having an awesome time doing whatever they're doing. And I hope it was fun for you to flip through that insane anarchist leftist book. Take care, everybody.